call this meeting to order. We will start with the flag salute, if you'd please join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everybody that is here tonight and those that are online watching us. Do we have any need for translation tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will go on to the approval of the agenda.
I motion to approve tonight's agenda.
And I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carries. First thing is recognition of fellow Police Department Explorers Program.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Amy Parisford, our Director of Student Services, to introduce our guest this evening to share an exciting group of young students and their supporters. Recent presentation at the Othello City Council, sharing their work and efforts as explorers. So we'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you. Is this a sharp-looking group of kids?
Yes.
So a couple of weeks ago, I did get the opportunity to watch their presentation at the City Council meeting, and it was phenomenal. The Explorers is an active group in our community that is also affiliated with our career and technical education programs of criminal justice and advanced criminal justice. And they're coached and led by probably everybody at the police station, but in specific our SROs. So Officer Fernando Lopez is here today, and I appreciate the chief being here and everybody to support them. So I welcome Fernando to come on up, and they have a presentation for you, kind of talking about some cool stuff they got to do this summer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Officer Lopez from the Othello Police Department, for those of you who don't know me. And I've been running this program for approximately 2 years, and I'll tell you, this is one of the best choices I've done in my career. This is a great group of kids right here. They've done a lot of great things in the last couple of years since I've been involved with the program. So we're here today to present to you some of the things that we've been doing in the last couple of years. You know, some of the events that we've attended, even an academy. There's an academy that they attend. And I'll tell you guys firsthand, I haven't seen anything that tough since I was in boot camp in the Army. So you got to give it to them. They're pretty tough kids. So I'm going to have all of them come up here, and they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. They're going to tell you their name, a little bit about what they've done recently. And I won't take too much of their time, so all right, guys, go ahead and stop here. It's not a big deal. It's okay. Come on. It's all right. Let's go first. Go first. Julie? Okay.
Hi, my name is Eileen Ochoa. I've been in this program about like a year now, and a fun thing that I got to do was give out medals to the Special Need Olympics, and that was actually meaningful for me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for having us tonight. My name is Paulina. I have been in the Police Explorers program for about a year and a half, and my favorite memory so far has been the shop with the cop, because I enjoyed seeing those kids' beautiful smiles when they got to go shop with for the gifts with the cops, and I enjoyed helping them because I enjoy helping others, and it was really amazing, and it made me really happy.
Hi, I'm Rosa. I've been in this program for about 2 years now, and my favorite memory has been attending the summer academy. It was hard, but at the end of the day, it was worth it. It taught me to not give up, and it was very fun. Being with everybody, it was very fun. I learned many things, and yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Valeria. I've been in the program for about 2.5 years, and my favorite thing is probably parades, and yeah, just parades and events like that.
Hi, my name is Araceli Cervantes, and I've been in the program for about 1.5 years now. One of the memorable memories of this program would be bonding with the police officers, knowing what's behind the scenes instead of them being a cop all the time, and just getting to know them and the real self.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Garcia, and I've been with the Explore program for about a year now. The best part about the program for me was getting to go on ride-alongs with many different officers.
Hi, my name is Jesse Contreras. I've been in the program for around 5 months now, and my favorite experience has been going to the academy.
So now these three right here, they're gonna show a presentation about their experience in the academy, okay?
So one of my favorite things about academy was evening formation. Evening formation is at the end of every day. All the different platoons, we would all meet up in the parking lot for different activities. So one of those activities was drill downs, where we would compete against each other. We would be given different marching commands, and whoever was the last one standing would win an award. One of my personal favorite thing about evening formation was definitely receiving ribbons. These ribbons up here that we would get on the top of every flag. So every platoon had their own flag, and we would all compete for the ribbons. So after a whole day of getting yelled at to do push-ups and getting told that like you suck or like you're slow, you're not getting it and everything, like every little mistake cost your whole group, you know, so you would kind of get upset. But then you would win a ribbon at the end of the day, and you would realize like, oh, I'm doing this for a purpose, I'm doing it for a reason, I'm making new friends, and we're all becoming a better team together. And it just like, it really brings up everyone's mood, and then like it feels good. And also another thing was competing with other platoons. So we would do things like beach volleyball or tug of war, and like just different stuff, challenges like that. And like it would feel good to win, because then you're like, oh, I'm all with all these friends now that I made, like we all just beat these other people. But it was even better watching our attack officers be even more excited than we were, because then they would all talk to other attack officers like, oh yeah, your platoon sucks. Oh yeah, we're better. We just did that. We beat you guys. So it was just funny seeing them even more excited than the actual explorers.
So my favorite part about the academy was the classroom time. It was definitely one of the most relaxing part of the day. One of the topics we learned about was the general academy rules. For example, some of those rules are always have your battle buddy with you. When you would enter the classroom, you would stand in front of a chair at the position of attention, and you would wait for the command of take seat to be seated. Another really important rule was no discrimination of any kind. Next, another topic we learned about was traffic control. So we had a Washington State Trooper come in and talk to us all about the safety of traffic control. And then after that, we had a live demonstration of what traffic control looks like and how it works. And we learned that the number one rule to traffic control is your safety always comes first. Lastly, another topic we learned about was range and firearm safety. The first rule we learned was treat every firearm as if it were loaded. The second rule was do not point your firearm at anything you're not willing to destroy. And we learned that the safety to every firearm is your brain.
My favorite part about academy would be the barracks. It was not like your daily home. It would be, to begin with, is to sleep when you are told. So we will come to attention in front of our beds, and we will sleep when the tags tell us to. Stay off the mats. If we step on the mats, we will get smoked before bed. And especially hygiene is a must, mandatory showers for all, and no eating in the barracks.
So going to academy, it was not what I had expected at all. I was thinking something more like football camp, where it's like you can wake up at whatever time you want. If you're told to be practice at like 9 o'clock, then you show up whenever you want. You can sleep throughout the day, take naps, eat whatever food you want. And there's a lot of horseplay too, because it's a bunch of football guys. So there's just a whole lot of messing around. But at academy, it was the complete opposite. It was something straight out of a movie, I guess. So, but it was very fun though.
So the hardest part about the academy was not giving up when in hard and stressful situations, and to keep on going even when you felt like quitting.
The easiest aspect would be marching alongside with my platoon while singing, and we would march to lunch, to bed, and to the parking lot to get smoked.
So one of the best things about Academy was the life skills that we got to learn and take home with us. So some of these life skills were being everywhere on time, get to everywhere where you need to with the purpose. Don't try to do anything by yourself. If you're working with the team, be a team player or be a team leader. Just do your role, and everything else is going to fall in place. So that was a big thing, because that's just what really helped everyone get through the whole academy. If you worked with your team, then you wouldn't get punished, and it just brings everyone closer together.
So another great part of the academy was getting to meet explorers from all over the state and getting to make amazing memories. So right here in the back, it's a picture of my platoon, and I'm actually right there with the blue road guard vest.
We would love to attend a second academy. It empowered us to push past our limit. It turned out way better than expected. And we would like to thank school board for having us today. Do you have any questions for us?
Excellent presentation. I didn't know we had such a program. So this is really really awesome to see the amount of participation. Did you do academy every year, or is it just once a year, or once every 3 years, or? They do 2 of them a year, one in the winter, one in the summer. Okay.
So where is the academy at? Is it like here around the town?
Yakima Training Center.
Okay. So like Chris, I wasn't even familiar with the program. So is this a program that's meant to lead into a law enforcement career?
A lot of explorers do become police officers. So this is like, it's not a prerequisite, but it's like a first step to becoming law enforcement. You learn a lot about the field. So a lot of them do become police officers.
Do any of our current students plan on going to law enforcement?
Oh, awesome.
That's great.
I know it's a great program. I had a daughter that was in it 20 years ago, a little over, when Roger Shell started it. David probably remembers. And she ended up going into emergency services and nursing afterwards. It looks like you guys are doing so much more than what they were doing back then, and it's great to see that it's continuing and still going strong.
I just want to say great presentation. I love, especially when there's been a male-dominated field for so long, and then there's a lot of women. So congratulations to you girls you've outnumbered the boys. You've outnumbered your peers that went to academy. And hopefully, I look forward to someday being pulled over by every single one of you. So hopefully you will go into law enforcement and come back and help protect our community from speeding and violence. But no, really, I hope you come back and stay and benefit our community, because you guys are the best and the brightest. So thank you so much for all that you're doing.
So one last thing before I forget, this is actually very important. Jesse, step up. So Jesse, when he was at the academy, he actually won what they call the Commander's Award. And if you guys know at the Yakima Training Center, it's not just a law enforcement program that they got going on there. It's a huge military base, and he did so amazing that the post commander, which I believe is a lieutenant colonel, created an award just for him. And I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you to bring it so you could show it off. But when they graduated, when they had their little graduation, they presented him with the award. So let's give him a hand. How about that? Jonathan, step up. And Jonathan also won what they call the Patrol Partner Award within his platoon, because when they're in their platoon, they get assigned a battle buddy, which is another explorer that they get assigned to. They have to stick with at all times. And whatever he did must have been pretty good. He didn't let his battle buddy down. They gave him the Patrol Partner Award. So let's give him a hand. And everybody's been doing really great. So let's just give them all a hand real quick, and we'll conclude this. Thank you.
It's always nice to see Chief Rem, who's been in the community for so long. He was my DARE officer at Hiawatha all those years ago. He was also my football coach in 7th grade. I think he was the first person to look at me and say, yeah, you're going to be an offensive lineman. And then that's what I did for the next 6 years. So.
Thank you again very much for being here, and thank you for what you are doing.
Yes, thank you.
With that, we will go on to student representative report. Miles.
Hi, Sebastian's not here to join me today, but nothing much so far. We've had our stuff coming on with homecoming, so that's pretty fun. But our cookies and convo has been confirmed. We got our tables and stuff ready for that. So again, September 12th, that'll be at both lunches. I'm pretty sure that's from 11:39 to 12:18 for the first one. Let me check the second schedule, sorry. Okay, yeah. So it'll be from 11:09, sorry, to 11:39, and then 11:44 to 12:14. So if you guys can maybe do a shift if you can't stay the whole time, that would be helpful. And that's about it.
Thank you. And I think we're going to be discussing the cookies and combo during board member discussion, which is right now. Aaron, do you have anything for our legislative report?
So the only thing I have is that the WASDA General Assembly is happening this month. It happens in person over in Seattle, and then they do some online stuff too, so I'll be keeping an eye on that.
Okay, thank you. The next one is the cookies for combo. I know I will not be available that day, so.
Yeah, I won't be available either, due to the fair.
Yeah.
I'm not available either. All my kids show animals in the fair, so I apologize.
That's okay.
Aaron, you're gonna have cookies to eat.
Tell me the times again.
11:09 to 11:39, and then 11:44 to 12:14.
Yeah, I could be there.
Is Azaro able to be there? Do you know? Okay.
His kids are showing animals too, so I doubt it, but.
Yeah.
Darn it.
And then the next thing for discussion is the Buffalo High School visit on Monday. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at that schedule? This Monday? Yeah. The only question I've got is, we've got classified staff, but we haven't got certified staff.
We'll check in with Principal Kat Atchison and see what she was thinking around the scheduling. I have two additional items, Ken, if I may. One is this week on the 13th. I know there was an invitation extended for the Rascal Rodeo. Some of our students may be participating in that. It's at 10 a.m. out at the rodeo grounds, and we were just wondering if there was confirmation of anyone plans to attend, if we need to announce a quorum or anything.
I would like to attend. Marissa and I talked about if we do need to do a quorum for something like that. Okay, yeah.
I will be there as well, Friday at 10 a.m.
10 a.m. on Wednesday? There's a
Friday.
possibility- Oh,
Friday.
I'm still in question, so you still may want to.
I think JR is planning on.
Bastion, and that student has made a decision not to participate. They are doing running start and just don't have time in their busy schedule. So we do need to select a replacement for Sebastian, which would happen in December. The selection for that, we were hoping to conduct a lunchtime meeting at 12 p.m. On or around the 14th of October. How does that look for folks?
That looks great for me, and I would love to do that so that they are able to come to WASDA with us in November. So thank you for being proactive about that.
And as I remember, when we made those selections, we had a lot of really good applicants. If we could encourage the applicants that did not make it last time to possibly come again.
So there's a regular board meeting on that day, but this will be in the afternoon of that same day.
Yeah, this will be at noon that day. So as long as we had 3 board members there, what we'll do is we'll advertise a closing date of October 7th for the students, and then plan on conducting those interviews on the 14th. Because I think I got 3 head nods here anyway, and then if we can get 1 or 2 more, we'll do that. Okay. Thank you, Ken.
Okay, anything else for board member discussion? Then we will go on to required approvals. Do I have a motion for the required approvals?
I motion to approve the required approvals.
And I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So carries. Then required approvals for accounts payable warrants 2. Have a motion?
I'll motion.
And I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will abstain from that vote.
And any opposed? And so carries. Superintendent informational items.
So we're going to present from here today, just again, so we can engage in a conversation. I think it was helpful the last time when I talked about superintendent goals to sort of see your faces and be able to interact with you in that way. And I know there was a request a few board meetings ago about sort of this status of the strategic plan. We got some questions during orientation day, and so we got this part of the team together to share with you the components of it. So we have Amy Paris here, who will be talking about the future ready components. Christina Benjamin will be talking about early excellence. I'll get into some of the high-level detail about who was involved, kind of where we're headed with it. John Wiseman will speak to Mastery of Standards at Area 3. Will Von Brock helped provide leadership around safety and belonging. That's Area 1. And then Jessica and I might bounce back and forth a little bit on some of the content here, okay? I think before we jump into it, the students that we just had is an excellent example of what I think the community should expect from us, and that's really quality, high-character kids who want to serve their community. That wasn't an OSD class, right? Officer Lopez works with us in partnership. Those are our students. They participated in an activity outside of school, right? Explorers. But that's built on something that Amy and former Chief Schenk and others developed, Aaron Garza, the new assistant chief, and Dave Ram, around creating CTE courses in our high school that expose students to the justice system. Here's what it means to be a skilled police officer. And so you can see how those partnerships exist. And part of the strategic planning was about letting the community know, this is what we're about as a school district. This is what we promise to do for your students. And even if you don't have kids in our schools, this is what we promise to deliver to the community. It really is a promise that we're making to the community, and you all are endorsing that. So we're going to share with you what you're promising the community, okay? You will just flip through together, and so we'll start with that cover page, and really it's just an opportunity to highlight kids from PK through 12. That's an AVID class and some other kids in our system, and really those core words that we came up with, a number of the thousands of interactions that Dr. Campbell helped us think through: believe, achieve, belong, empowering dreams for all, right? Some of those kids just raised their hands and said, I dream of being a police officer. I dream of being able to serve my community and provide for my family by being a high character police officer. And so if that's their dream, we want to create experiences that allow them to do that. When you turn the page, you'll see a simple table of contents, and again, some more positive imagery of our kids with big smiles that we think are happy and engaged in the work that happens in our schools every day. And the mission statement that you helped seed. You'll remember that Dr. Campbell led us through an activity where you provided words and phrases and thoughts about what Othello School District is about and what the community of Othello is about. And so I'm going to read it to you and read it to the community. The Othello School District will educate, empower, and ensure the success of every student in our community by building healthy relationships, developing character, and providing meaningful, rigorous instruction. And if we work towards those 3 things every day, we know that our kids are getting a good outcome, and that our voters and our constituents are getting a strong return on their investment. We're going to share with you in this pamphlet the collective voices from the district, the vision of the student experience, and the core values, which I share with the board every Friday. This team up here will share with you some of the specific goals, targets, and outcomes. Jessica will talk about some of the district foundations. Amy will touch on the profile of a graduate, and we'll really dig in here, getting maybe more in the weeds around some of the practices we're going to engage in. What I would encourage you to do is to, as we're going through, if you have questions, let's interrupt along the way. I think it's more suited to be a dialogue. So if I don't catch your eye, just grab that mic and let us know that you have a question or a comment or that you want to share, okay? We're going to jump right in. So the third page is the message from the district. Typically, you'll land in school districts and you'll see their strategic plan. You can look at many of them online, and there's always a message from the superintendent. And Dr. Campbell challenged me to include a message from the superintendent. And what I wanted to let her know that board members come and go, principals come and go, superintendents come and go. For the next 6 or 7 years in the Othello School District, it's important that our district lives this message. And so, although some of the words are from me, and certainly I had a strong voice in developing it, I want the community to know, and I own the messaging, but it really is about us. What are we doing as leaders, and you as leaders, to provide the experiences that our kids need? And so that's the district message there. It also shares with folks, when they look at this document, the number of voices and hands that touch this product. There's one sort of concept around visionary leadership. What's the leader at the top tell us we're going to do? But there's also a style of collective leadership. Here's what John shares this over and over, right? The smartest person in the room is the room, right? The collective intelligence and expertise that lives in the room. So those are the people that we talk to and what we ask them about. And you've heard me talk about learner, achiever, and dreamer, right? This idea that you heard it today from our students, right? I know what a successful cadet looks like. I know what someone who goes into law enforcement looks like. And if I didn't know when I got here, if I thought it was going to be like football camp, I quickly learned that it wasn't. And I learned so well that I got the Commandant's Award or whatever that was, right? And that I'm an achiever. I can do hard things. You heard a number of the students talk about, well, it was tougher than I expected it to be. I thought this was going to be a fun activity. And so many of our kids we know are willing to come in and do hard things. And then that they have dreams for themselves. And we hope that our staff has those dreams in our students as well. And that's really where it ends, right? I belong here. I'm part of this community. And Othello believes in me. They're investing in me. My teachers believe in me. And really sort of the aspirational ideas of these kinds of projects. And then weekly, and maybe this is more of a message for the community and less for the board and for some up here, each Friday I send a brief message to the board and video content, sharing with them the good work that people are doing across our school district, highlighting the work of our students and staff. And each section that I share is tied to integrity, community, and excellence. I look for examples of people acting with integrity, delivering on their word. I look for examples of us partnering with our community and building community. And then I look for excellence across the system, and I share that story with them about the work that's happening in our schools. So now we're going to get into some of the broader areas. And again, here, what we did here, when you think about nested goals, is we took, actually, Jessica, you want me to do this one, or would you like to? Go ahead. All right, thanks. So the 4 broad areas, right? Safety and belonging, where you're going to hear from Will. Early excellence, right? What are we doing for those early learners? And mastery of standards. When kids are in our schools, are we making sure that they're learning what we need them to learn? And how are we measuring whether or not they're learning it? And what do we do when they do, and what do we do when they don't, right? How are we reacting and responding as adults? And then future ready. Are our kids, when they leave our system, ready to move on to the world of work, the world of service, post-secondary education, whatever their dreams are, that idea about dreams and aspirations, how are they moving? I think it's important also at the top of the document for the community and the board to understand that these are aggressive goals, and so we map them out through 2030. All right, again, for the next 6 or 7 years in this community, here's what we're going to be working on. Now, that doesn't mean that next year we might not come to you and say, hey, remember when we shared those outcomes with you? We made some really outstanding progress. Now we're resetting our goal. Or, hey, that was a heavier lift than we expected, so now we're backing down and we're going to adjust that a little bit, right? These goals have to stretch us, but they also have to be realistic and attainable, and people feel like when they bring their best effort that they can get it done. So those are the 4 broad areas and some of the outcomes that we talk about, and the team will share with you each of those areas.
So there were a lot of committees and groups of people that got together and gave feedback and developed ideas. And one of the smaller groups that came together toward the end of the process was around this idea of district foundations. And it was honestly something I wasn't really sure. By that time, there had been so many different meetings and committees, I wasn't really sure what this was about. But what we came up with is so essential. It's similar to some of the comments that have been made about our preschool. If we don't have a strong foundation to build upon, it's going to be really difficult to do the hard work that's coming. And so that's what this is. Really looking at the foundations and the work that people across the district need to be able to do in order to enable the principals and the teachers to do the work that they need to do with students. So that first one is engaging in effective teaching and learning systems. So I think about the work that the teaching and learning team does with the principals on a daily basis, really looking at the curriculum that we're using, the assessments that we're using, and making sure that we're really thinking about the programs and thinking, being very forward thinking in what we offer our students. Authentic community engagement. That's a lot of the work that the school board does, but also when you think about our communications director and our student groups and our student reps, that's all incredibly important to creating that community engagement. We have a lot of really hardworking people in our district that make sure that our buses run, that our facilities are high class, that we have the food that we need for our students. All of that goes into facilities and operations, and that's equally important to the work that you're about to hear from the different goal areas. And then finally, a culture of excellence and accountability and continuous improvement. I really appreciated the presentation that we just heard from the Explorers. I think that's a really good example of how we are preparing our students to enter the workforce. And I mean, just being able to get up in front of a group of adults and speak the way that they were able to was amazing. And that really feeds into the overall picture of a student that we want our graduates to be. And that's a part of what we'll be hearing too with our profile of a graduate in a few moments.
And before we jump over to Amy to talk about the profile of a graduate, I think this is a really important page for the board in thinking about your work as a foundational component to a school district. School districts across the country are governed by boards, right? Local elected people, local control is an important thing. And there's some foundational things that you need to provide for our staff and some accountability that you need to provide for me and me for the rest of the staff to say, hey, we're delivering on the voters who elected you and the things that we said we're going to do for our community. So when I think about expanded offerings, are you listening as board members when people come in and advocate for particular programs? Are you paying attention when someone says, hey, something might be cut? And how do you balance, well, we had to cut that because we had to go do this. How do you think through and process that as a board member? Also around facilities and operations, every time that you all meet, you're approving things that cost thousands of dollars. Do we need air-conditioned buses? Do we need these facility improvements? Do we need this infrastructure? All those things have to happen so that our people can do the teaching and learning activities. And again, like Jessica shared, when this came out sort of the end of the process, we're like, one more thing we have to think through. It really is the foundation of the work to allow the real work to happen. So as a board member, this one in particular will impact what you're doing.
For the profile of a graduate, you've seen it before and you'll see it again. We just want to always keep this in the fold. We see this as one of maybe our final steps. You notice that the goals are forecasted out to 2030. So we want to make sure that the ideas behind this are kind of manifested in all of the work that we do. We're on step 5 of 100 or something like that right now. Last year, a ton of work went into creating this, and now principals and leadership teams are really figuring out how to integrate this into their buildings. So this profile of a graduate's not going to go away, but you're gonna see it again and again. We'll have concrete steps in the next few years that really bridges the work that's going now to, you know, kind of what we really hope all of our kids look like. If all of our kids could stand up like those Explorers at the end, that would be amazing. And to be perfectly honest, we're on that pathway at the end of senior year when they come and present. They're very poised and ready to tell you and their parents what their next plans are. So this is a reminder that that is ultimately what we're hoping for.
So we're about 10 pages in and we're about 10 minutes in. And we're going to take a breather and we're going to wait for at least 2 questions from the board.
because I do have a question. Is this the profile of a graduate? Walk me through it a little bit in that. So Lindsay Prowse is a kindergartner, and will my profile follow me K through 12 so that when I'm, let's say, doing my senior presentation, I can say, I was a critical thinker in second grade. Look at how I thought through this, or whatever. Something that kind of compiles your education K-12, or is your profile graduate just 9-12 or just 12? Like, what does that look like?
K-12, pre-K-12. Absolutely. We have lots of different things that we're thinking about, but you nailed it when you said we want it to follow them, because we all grow by seeing progress. So what you thought a critical thinker was, or a learner at age 8 versus what you do when you're 16 or 17, that reflection piece is going to be invaluable. And it brings ownership and buy-in for all levels in the system, because a kindergarten teacher has to think about what communication looks like when they're 5, and to be a team player and a collaborator and an advocate for one another. So it'll be developmentally appropriate as we go, but we're hoping to build in standards and these goals that you're about to hear about throughout.
So will it be something that, I'm thinking of, like, obviously not social media, but something that looks like a Facebook profile or something, to where each student has one and can look at it?
Yeah, we see a digital profile in there, and ultimately this is how our kids will talk. What does it mean to you to be an advocate? And, you know, you're a learner, tell me what your next steps are when they're taking courses in secondary, or when they're making bad decisions. Like, how does that tie into you being, you know, a critical thinker? Let's talk through that. So I hope that it's the vocabulary by which we do everything eventually.
Great, thank you.
I just want to add a comment before the next question from the board, because we're still waiting for one more. I've heard Christina Benjamin at her school, when she's leading the folks at Ludokaga, she has this phrase that she uses continually: see it, name it, do it. So when I think about that with this, where we're at, Lindsay, is if I think about Miles and Sebastian and Katie and Elise, we would all say these are really good kids and they were really good board members, right? So we can see it. If I was going to name it, I would say, when I look over at Miles, when we're all talking about stuff and I've had enough interactions with him, I know he's thinking deeply about what's being shared and whether or not he agrees or disagrees with it. I know he's a critical thinker. I know he can communicate. He got in front of 500 people on orientation day and was telling jokes and was bringing them along with the story that we were trying to share. He's taken on learning the role. He's here today after his second or third board meeting without Sebastian. He's learned how these meetings roll. He certainly collaborates consistently with the leadership group at the high school, and everybody at that high school knows Miles. And he's an advocate, right? He has strong opinions about things, and he's willing to share them. So now we've just named it. We didn't just see that Miles was a good kid and had high character and the kind of kid we want our schools to produce. We named it. Now our job is to go do it. How do we find kids that maybe haven't had the experiences or don't have the skills or talent Miles has developed? How do we help them develop it? And when you can do that, when you can name it, then you can go teach it, right? Then you're teaching with clarity. You set those expectations. So we're really along that. This has been around for a long time. And we had some struggles with Dr. Campbell about whether or not we were going to keep it in there. Because for Amy, it's been, I don't know, it's close to 10 years. We've been, like 27, yeah. So we've been talking about it for a long time, so we didn't want it to go away. But it's not something that I think we're sort of that readiness to benefit idea. Is that where we're at as a system? I think it's having these kinds of conversations and saying, this is eventually where we're going. But this is sort of high-level comments I just made about Miles and his colleagues. You're going to hear some real specificity from these guys about we're going to target in on these things. So maybe one more question?
Yeah. For page 5 on our mastery standard and performance section, just a little question, not to freak out, but our standard was 5 out of 10 students will meet ELA standards, 4 out of 10 students will meet math, and 4 out of 10 will meet science standards. I'm a little scared, but I am understanding that for the ELA especially too, we have a lot of multilingual learners or people who are not English first language. So is that what's impacting that the most, or like are we testing lower per year? Is that why that standard's a little bit shorter than the others?
Well, yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because you look at it and like 4 out of 10, like that's we're calling that a high standard. When we look at where we are now, that's some of the pieces that you have to do is look at the current reality of where we are. So if you looked at all the students from 3rd grade to 10th grade that took the Smarter Balance Assessment, this last year in math, it was 24%. 24% met standard. And so what we're saying is nearly doubling that, right? Are we happy or satisfied with 4 out of 10? Absolutely not, right? Like it is something that we absolutely we hope to exceed that, of course, but let's get there first. And then as Dr. Perez had talked about how when we get going and we get really intentional about this work, and we can kind of say like, maybe we can accelerate that even sooner than we thought. But that's where we set it for right now, saying, all right, that's nearly doubling the number of students. Let's start there, and then we'll continue to push forward.
And I'm assuming the ones up top, 9 out of 10 students will miss 2 or less days. That will help alleviate those. You know, the long-term or short-term suspension, that will help alleviate those. Okay.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things about this kind of data, Miles, and that I'm not shocked that you caught that. And what I want you to hear, and I want everyone to hear, because this isn't the national narrative. There are narratives out there about public schools in particular that teachers aren't working hard enough and kids aren't learning enough. I have been in this for 30 years now, and then 20 years before that as a student. Students are learning more things at higher levels than ever before in our country. I really believe that. The assessments that you and your classmates are being asked to take were not the assessments that Director Gerber took or the assessments that I took. Our teachers are working very, very hard, and our kids are working very, very hard. And it can be easy to say, well, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10. It wasn't like that when back in the day. Well, it's a little bit different game. And so I think in public ed in particular, and you guys are part of this game of public education, you're leaders in public education. You should listen to the experts that our kids and our teachers are doing more than they've ever been asked to do at higher levels than they've ever been asked to do it. And so we should be proud of what we're doing. That 4 out of 10, you should call it out, but I hope you don't see that as a badge of, man, we're not doing great things, because there really are great things happening by our kids and by our teachers every day. So let's get into the weeds a little. Well, he jumped in. I thought there was another question over here. Do you want to save it, or you got one?
I just wanted to comment on the profile of graduate, the little sentences underneath each one. I really appreciate those. I got to come to that meeting with the community members where we talked about what we want our students to be able to do, and these sentences are things that we want to describe kids that come through our system. And I remember all the groups just laboring over like every single word and what they wanted it to be and what they didn't want it to be. And I just really appreciate those sentences down there as describing what we want our students to have.
And as I recall that meeting, it was really important to have people in our community, leaders in our community, and maybe people who didn't have kids in our schools anymore, but said, man, when I want an employee to show up, I want them to be able to do this. I want them to look at a piece of data for 10 minutes and say, hey, that seems a little off. Why are you doing that, right? Director Baginski, did you have one?
I'll wait.
You'll wait, okay, all right. You might not get another chance. So we're gonna jump into the specific goal areas and the practices, and so Will Von Brock is gonna start us off around safety and belonging.
Yeah, thank you. I was able to head up the safety and belonging section with a team of educators that really tried to look at how are students engaging in our environment and how do they feel when they're there. So we were able to go through data and think through, where are we at and where do we want to get. If you flip to page 11 on the very bottom, you'll see our performance targets that we came up with. The first outcome that we're looking for is the time students spend in our learning environments. And I was really appreciative of Miles calling that out, that, hey, if we want more students to pass, they need more time in these excellent classrooms that Dr. Perez has just described. So that's what those first 2 targets are about. 9 out of 10 students missing 2 or less days per month of school, that they're there and they're engaged. And then 0 out of 10 students having a short-term or long-term suspension. So reducing that exclusionary discipline. We know there's times when it's necessary, but we want to be proactive. We want to meet students' needs. What I really appreciated about the group and what when we talked about those things is it wasn't just about systems of accountability and like harder rules or harder punishments, but it was recognizing that our environment and those moves that we make as educators really impact those things. I was curious as we listened to the Explorers, like, how many absences did you have during that academy? And it was probably none because of the wonderful experience they were talking about there. They talked about, I had to get up earlier, I had to work harder than I've ever worked, but you could hear them describe in their words how much they belonged there, and they felt like they were accomplishing something. So we recognized that, and in that first outcome, you'll see that we described strategies that administrators and teachers and district leaders will engage in. Things such as welcoming students when they come to class, right? I know that we're busy. We're all working really hard. If we're working and thinking about the standards that we're helping students get, sometimes we can get overwhelmed, and we're working really hard to get that classroom started in that first thing. We just pulled in, we're trying to get things started. But it makes a huge difference when you arrive at a school and somebody greets you with a smile and calls you by name. I told the crosswalk kids the other day, I said, do you know what everybody's favorite word is? Their name. I said, when you see them and you know their name, call them by their name. And that really invites them in. Using those state-adopted SEL standards in those programs and implementing them into our classrooms so students have those skills. I'm really excited. We've got all 4 elementaries engaging in some level of the Amazing Shake. Those sorts of things and those activities that bring out and teach kids how to feel confident, how to feel comfortable, how to stand up and do those things like we just saw our students doing and we talked about in the profile of the graduate. We can't just assume they know that or wish that somebody else would teach them that. We're gonna put those in. And then regularly recognizing excellence. If we do those things, then kids are gonna have the tools to be successful in our environment, and they're gonna have a desire to be there. And then, that's going to impact that outcome too as well, which is that time spent in their learning environment. We also know that sometimes our systems are used to exclusionary discipline. We have these systems and these traditions and these habits, almost you'd call them. So how do we use best practice? How do we engage in alternative discipline routes? How do we help students feel accountable, help students understand our norms and our expectations? But do it in an alternative way that's not excluding them when it's not necessary from the learning environment, but actually keeps them in and brings them in. And communication and engagement, we saw that this is a great example. This process was a great example of engaging staff members and engaging community members. We want to keep doing that throughout, and we know that that's going to create those environments for students. And then we want students to feel safe in schools. That's a huge thing. I know it's been a focus of the board over the last several years, doing those things that are going to help staff members, help students give input, implement new technologies or new systems that are going to help them feel safe and comfortable in schools. Those are our 3 goal areas. We have focused primarily this first year, and I think Dr. Perez already shared his goals with you and some of those outcomes. We're focusing primarily on that attendance component. If we can create a place where students feel comfortable, where they feel engaged in the curriculum and the instruction, then they're going to want to be here. The more they're here, the more successful they feel, and it becomes a cycle where they want to be here and be a part of it. Again, it was really great to hear from the Explorers, and I asked myself that about their attendance. I heard one of them describe this whole experience of working really hard and getting up earlier and being hot and exercising, and he said it was really, and then he paused, and then he just said fun, because I think he couldn't think of another word for it, and I was like, that doesn't sound like fun, right? When students are engaged in high quality instruction with a teacher who cares about them and cares about them enough to push them and to accelerate their learning, it's a rewarding experience. And we naturally want to be there and be a part of that. And that's what we're seeing in our students, and that's what we want to continue to enhance. So I did want to call out as we leave this goal area, this is interwoven into all the other areas. This one feels like, oh, this is safety and belonging. We got to make kids feel good, and we got to do these things. With our staff, we recently read our beginning a book, and it says one of the chapter headings was teaching well builds relationships, right? The smiling and the games that we might play are fantastic, but engaging them in content and engaging them in high quality instruction is one of the best relationship builders, because it boosts the confidence and the skill level of our students, and they engage in that. Everybody wants to grow. So that we're excited for the work that we're putting into this and the work that each building is doing in selecting how they're going to tackle attendance and increase their rates of student engagement in that way.
Can I ask a quick question, Will? Sorry, Aaron. So on page 9 in the number 1 green box, it says using a school adopted system. Were you referring to like the Amazing Shake when you talked about a school adopted system, or what does that mean?
Yeah, so several years ago, and Amy can speak to this a little bit too, we adopted we adopted the state standards, the new SEL standards, and then we adopted some curriculums. Right now it's, second step, there we go. We do have a second step curriculum that all the teachers go through as well. Amazing Shake has been layered on top of that as well, which is really exciting. It wouldn't be an officially adopted curriculum, but something else that we're implementing that I think is really exciting and public and is helping students learn those things. So we're excited to see where that goes in the next several years as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a quick question about how you gathered the data for whether or not students feel safe. Is that like surveys? How does that happen?
Yeah, and I think throughout this document, as you look at the outcome, below it, you'll see like in parentheses a kind of a list. For safety, we have several surveys that students get throughout the year. So we have a CEE survey that we give to all students. We have a healthy youth survey. I believe some of our secondary schools use this BESS survey. So there's several surveys and maybe several measures. I believe for the metric itself, we identified one survey that we felt was good, that most students are getting and that we can get the best data from. And that one, it would be the CEE data, I believe, is how we identify that.
All right, so as Will was talking about really accelerating learning when it comes to safety and belonging, it also really starts with a strong foundation, and that's with early excellence in this next goal area number 2, starting on page 12. But before you look at page 12, flip to page 14, because at the very bottom there, that's where you'll see the performance targets that we're going to be working for our early excellence. Just as Will was also talking about, you'll see a lot of things interwoven together, and as soon as I go through our 3 goal areas of goal area number 2, you'll notice a lot of similarities for safety and belonging, and then followed up by what John's going to talk about with mastery standards too. So all of this is not standalone by themselves, but it's stuff that we do in our daily practice every day here at our schools. So for early excellence, our goal outcome number 1 is really wrapped around SEL, social emotional learning, with increase the number of students who demonstrate developmentally appropriate social emotional skills. And when we talk about early excellence, we're really talking about the pre-K to 3 range right there. We will be doing this with creating and utilizing really explicit schedules and building classroom routines. When we talk about explicit schedules, it's those visual schedules. We know, especially us adults, when we walk into something and we know what to expect, we typically do better and we feel more comfortable and at ease. Same with kids. We want them to be able to access what is coming up in their day, in their week, and start having a routine so they know how to self-regulate and how to be prepared for those moments to come. Also part of goal area or outcome number 1 is to use developmentally appropriate practices with like the plan, do, review, meaningful purpose, and purposeful play. That's really focusing on those fine and gross motor skills. Outcome number 2 kind of switches a little bit from the SEL into more of the reading stance. So for outcome number 2 with early excellence is increase the number of students who are reading on grade level by 3rd grade. Now, like what Will was referencing, these data points down below, we'll be taking a lot of measures for this. We'll be looking at our STAR scores, our DIBEL scores, which is reading fluency, our GR scores, again, reading fluency and accuracy, ESPA scores, because 3rd grade is when we start taking our statewide ESPA, and WIDA, which is our language assessment, as well as every single one of our buildings has interim assessments. And I'm pretty sure John will talk about this. We're working towards a district-wide alignment with our language arts interims right there. When it comes to reading and increasing the number of students reading at grade level, we're going to be providing really high rigorous grade level core instruction. All kids have access to core instruction. That's every single day we get core instruction. There's also a tier 2 type of instruction and tier 3 type of instruction. But if we can get our core instruction at the highest quality, we're gonna get all of our kids there. And when we talk about language arts, there's 5 components to language arts. Those 5 are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Equally, we also have writing. That rounds up what a language arts program is.
Sorry, one question here. What's the difference of phonemic writing phonemic writing and phonics?
Yeah, phonemic awareness is the sounds, and phonics, being able to hear the sounds. So, and then phonics is being able to identify the sound. So, for example, Miles, what is the first sound of your letter of your name? Miles. And what letter makes M? So, phonemic awareness, phonics. That was a really good question, and thanks for learning with me. Another area of goal number 2, with the reading focus on, is to implement high quality standards aligned with teacher clarity practices. And we really talk about teacher clarity, that's breaking down standards, having all of our educators really know and identify what our priority standards are and how to teach it. So we talk a lot in our schools about the what we're doing and the how we're doing it. That's the conversations that we'll be activating during those times. Also implementing building-wide created interims and using data to really support individual needs after that. So it's one thing to give an assessment that's highly rigorous, but it's another thing to have educators sit down and analyze the data to know what we're going to do with it. Our last area in goal area number 2 is all around math, increasing the number of students who are demonstrating grade level math, fact fluency, and number sense. And this is really key for us because that number sense is pivotal as they move on into the higher grades. So when we talk about foundational skills for pre-K3, it's all about number sense and fact fluency. We're going to be implementing high quality standards that align with teacher clarity. It's very similar to how reading is. We unpack standards, we understand what the kids are supposed to be getting for that grade level, and then we know how to teach to it the first time around. We also will be doing or implementing building-wide math interims, very similar to how we do our language arts interims, and then doing data analysis around it to really know what we need to do to intervene with our kids and or what extensions our kids can do next. And then also provide instructional tasks that utilize multiple strategies, really about that learning progression. And when it comes to math learning progression, it's kind of a stage. If you can kind of visualize a straight line here, we start with the concrete where we have a lot of manipulatives. You see that a lot with toddlers, they're counting their Cheerios, right? And then you have pictorial. Can kids now represent math in pictures? Then you have numerical. Can they actually do it without pictures, without some type of manipulative, and just work with numbers? And then is the abstract thinking. Can they now work in actual word problems? Can they put it all together and blend addition and subtraction and multiplication, because that's repeated addition. That's more of the abstract realm right there. When it comes to our school district, we have those goal areas or those outcomes for goal area number 2, but our district is really primarily focusing for early excellence around math. We really need to get our kids there when it comes to math fact fluency. And so that's going to be our biggest push this year as we enter into our strategic plan around goal area number 2. Do you have any questions? Or should I do a Dr. Perez? Let's hear at least 2 questions.
Yeah. Can you explain fact fluency?
Explain. So fact fluency is, there's many different ways to do it. So for example, Aaron, how many fingers do I have? Did you know that by counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Or did you just know that there was 5 there? Yeah, you both. You knew that because you're very common with knowing what that number represents, what that visually represents. So now if I do this, and if I hold up 2 hands, would you have to count out all of my fingers right here to get to 10? Or would you just know that 2 of 5 equals 10? That's fact fluency, being able to do it really quick and fast, because you can now make partners and pairs and use numbers to make mathematical sense.
I have a question with the, you touched on earlier about how our teachers are going to be able to analyze our assessments and stuff. I was under the impression that when we take our star and those kind of things that the teachers, they get a score, but they don't see what we scored in. Is that going to, what will we do in implementation to help that, or to let's get the specifics of what we're needing?
What's really cool, Miles, make sure I touch on 2 things right now, okay? What's really nice about the STAR assessment is that there's multiple types of reports that come from a STAR assessment. A lot of it is very much percentile ranking or leveling or scaled scores, but then we can actually go in there and manipulate those assessments and really drill down by student, by target, and by standard. And we can really see where they miss, because STAR is a computer adaptive assessment, so it changes based on every single kid and every single answer they give. And it'll show us those areas that they're struggling with.
Yeah, I believe it's by like the time it takes me to answer what I'm answering. Okay,
Yeah, there's a big algorithm there. Another part of our assessments is our building interim assessments, and those are building created right now, and it's all about the standards and what we are teaching in our scope and sequences. We have access to those assessments because we're making them, and definitely we look at them afterwards. So I know that our teams at all of our buildings are meeting as data analysis meetings after all of these assessments, and we go through every single question. We label what target it is or what standard it is, and that goes back to the teacher clarity, really unpacking the standards and knowing how to teach it. And then that's where we analyze what that individual kid needs versus this kid needs, or maybe a group of students need to do next.
Just a comment about fact fluency for your experience maybe as a learner. Do you remember being in third, fourth, and fifth grade and you'd have a minute time to see how many addition or multiplication?
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Krebs.
That was your day, right? You're like, okay, who's gonna get second place because Aaron's in our room, right? That's fact fluency. Where it is now, there are so many resources and technologies available, and you might use some with your own children, but you can imagine a student who's, these balloons are dropping, 1 + 1, 1 + 2, and when you get the correct answer, you pop the balloon, right? And they come faster and faster and faster the more fluent that you get. And it knows where you're at, it knows where your skill level is, and it challenges you with the next one. So that's really about what fact fluency is about.
Thank you.
You real quick, you mentioned all this data. Sometimes you get a lot of data and it can be overwhelming at times, right? Do you guys kind of just sort through the main data to look at what exactly each student's doing? I know in the dairy industry, like I have my cows tested, and it's not just for milk production, but they give us sheets with just piles and piles of numbers, and sometimes it's just, okay, I only want to look at 2 things, but because you got all this data and it can take you hours to sift through it. I mean, there's parts of it that makes, are valuable, but there's parts of it that's not as valuable. But is it kind of the same thing? You get all this, because it'll blow your
It's literally what I did all weekend long, was sort through all of our student data, because every single one of our buildings right now is doing data collection on our kids. And to be honest, even though there's multiple different data points that are coming to us on every single individual student, every single one of those data points is information for us, and that's important because it allows us, as maybe the building lens, to see trends, to see where some things are working so we can start figuring out how to do that more. See where some things we need to send some emergency support to, because this kid's just started school and we can really take them and grow. And then also just to see our growth and have celebrations. So every single aspect of it is extremely important. I know that for our goal area number 2 here, we'll be primarily looking on the math data scores. And I know that I feel comfortable not talking about the reading scores because John's going to be talking about the reading scores coming up, because that's going to be extremely important. If I was to be honest, and just speaking for my school alone, which is Lutakaga Elementary, we have all of our data right now that's coming in, and I can sit here and tell you that we are starting the school year off with more fluent and more accurate readers than we have had in the past. And that data is valuable information for us to know as educators, because now we know the level of rigor that we can up to.
Can I say something on data too?
Yeah.
Really cool talking about the explorers, and they left that camp with a sense of like, I can do something hard. And we talked about that with our profile as well. I think when we're looking at the data, when we've talked about that for students and for staff, we call that efficacy. They have a sense of like, I can do things that I want to accomplish. I can set my goals and I can do that. When we're looking at data, we want to make sure, like Christina said, a lot of our job is just combing through these data sheets. And when I first started here in Othello and they gave us all these data sheets, I said, I don't even know what I'm looking at, right? But as a principal, my job is to go through those data sheets and not just look at data and give somebody a really nice graph, but to be able to articulate to them, we did this in the classroom and it led to this level of learning. So when I think about the data, and it was pretty cool to hear Miles talk about like some of his assessments, and like, I know that STAR gives me different stuff. Like, how does that work? And you're right, STAR serves more as a dipstick. So when I think about STAR, hey, I take it 3 times a year. It gives me big picture data on how I'm doing with my learning. But like Christina talked about, then we give the interims that give us more detailed data, right? And the key for me and the key for us, I think, as we look at this whole profile and is to be able to say, hey, what actions did we take and how did it lead to this outcome or this data, either because we're trending in the right direction or we're trending in the wrong direction. And that allows us, you as a board, us as principals, teachers, and students to develop that efficacy. I know when I do this, this leads to this outcome of learning, of enhanced student learning. So that's really our job, and that's what I see this work enhancing, and then our job as a principal is to present that in different directions, both to you and our teachers, in a way that they're able to articulate and understand what they're doing that makes an impact.
And what you're going to see around data literacy is really what you're talking about. You might see a teacher, so you talked about like there's too much, it's overwhelming, right? Where I have seen the paralysis come more consistently is when it's November and a new family moves in and we're not sure, the kids, we know the students in 3rd grade, but what math class do we put them in? Where do we you've got to give them the 12 assessments that Principal Benjamin's been giving all year before I can place them. Or if you're really fluent and really skilled, you say, here's 3 problems. Let me see if you can do them. Oh, you couldn't do those? Well, because I'm so fluent and I know where the progression is, here's 3 more. Oh, you can do those, you're in this group, right? So it's no different in your industry. When you, if you've been doing what you've been doing for 25, 30 years, you're more fluent than a new dairy farmer, right? And so that literacy and expertise that you have, it's the same in our industry. Or do we have people who don't get paralyzed by the amount of data? They're able to really focus in and say, this is where we go. But having all that data also allows us to paint a more complete picture of the student. It's not just this one moment in time, they demonstrated it several times.
And part of that is also what Will was referencing is one of our jobs with all of that data collection is knowing who and when and how to start talking about it. For example, we're getting all of this information, but only this piece of data is extremely important for our counselors to take a kid and run with them or start conversing with families about it. And this piece of data over here is really going to be intentional with their reading fluency teacher that they meet with every single day for 30 minutes. Or this piece is going to be extremely important for the whole building to see that there's a trend in something that's happening. So I think part of being data literate for us is also knowing who and when all that data goes to, because we don't need to give all of it to everybody at once.
So who says data and who says data?
Yes. All right. So I had an opportunity to be part of the committee that was working on the mastery of standards. And oftentimes when we think about schools, that's where we first go to, right, is be able to do that. But just as has been mentioned, when kids feel safe and they feel like they belong at school and we have that attendance, and then we give them that really strong foundation in early excellence, it really sets it up so that they can be successful throughout the remainder of their academic careers. And so this really focuses on student learning and how to eliminate barriers to accelerated learning courses. Like, how do we provide more students more opportunities for that? And so outcome 1 is for all students, and it focuses on meeting and exceeding proficiency in every grade level and across all the content areas. Some of the strategies to accomplish that would be planning and creating intentional learning opportunities, being really intentional with our lesson plans and what we put in front of kids in the tasks and activities, or providing students with timely feedback. So as you were talking about, like, where am I at with my learning? Standards-based grading is a part of that, right? With our secondary, one of the goals or the outcomes for that is to be able to help students know where they're at with their learning and what their next steps are. Making data-informed instructions with common assessments. Christina had talked about the collaboration that is happening between the schools is stronger this year than I have ever seen it, and this is my 21st year in the district. But being able to support one another, being able to say, okay, we're going to use this measure together, so that then we can come back, look at the data across the district and say, wow, Christina, you're really successful over here. Can I go and observe and see some of the strategies that you're using? Let's learn from each other and provide those opportunities. And then ensuring that all students receive high quality education and viable curriculum, right? What are we putting in front of the kids? It shouldn't matter whether they go to Hiawatha or Scootney or Wahitas or wherever, that we can say with confidence that all of our students are going to receive a high quality education. Outcome 2 gets a little more specific around our multilingual students. And so this is to be able to help them to meet or exceed adequate yearly progress as measured on the WIDA, which is a language assessment that's given annually. And to be able to do this, some strategies are embed the learning development standards within core content areas. Be intentional about the instructional strategies that we put in front of kids. Provide access to rigorous grade level content. And that's super important, that we don't automatically assume, like, because they come to us learning a language outside of English, that we're going to put them in this other class that doesn't get to the grade level standard. No, we understand that they are fully capable of achieving high things, and so be able to provide those opportunities. And then to support our teachers with ongoing training about the proficiency standards and what that looks like, and provide them with strategies. Then outcome 3 is for all students the opportunity to take accelerated learning courses. It starts with, at the younger grade levels, doing online core instruction to prepare them for those future opportunities, and then creating a culture of high expectations for all kids. Will has touched on it several times, right? There's something about when somebody has confidence in you that you can rise up to those opportunities. And so those are the 3 outcomes for that. As a district, we're primarily focusing on outcome 1. Christina had talked about the math outcome. The reading side of that is that 8 out of 10 students will be reading at grade level in 3rd grade. From pre-K to up to 3rd grade, students are learning how to read. From 3rd grade through the rest of their lives, they read to learn, right? And so you had talked about the math fluency. If math fluency could be compared to, we just also talked about like phonics and phonemic awareness, right? In the beginning, you're learning to decode what those symbols mean. What does that mean? So you can make words, and then those words into sentences, and then sentences to make meaning. In math, it would be the same thing, that we learn math fluency so that we don't get so caught up on just the operation of math, so that we can begin to solve complex things. And so that's in a nutshell with the mastery of standards of what that looks like. But again, I can't emphasize enough that the other 2 areas that we just spoke to are critical in order to give students that opportunity to be at mastery with the content level.
So down here in parentheses, you got highly capable and MMS students teaching high school classes. So it's feasible that MMS students could be earning high school credits?
Correct. Yes. So like if we go through and there's opportunities that students are prepared for example, algebra courses that could count as high school credits, that would allow them, when they do transition to the high school, that they can then be on track to take even higher level math courses. You're absolutely correct. Yep.
That might be should that be taking, not teaching?
Probably.
Yeah.
We could save some money.
Yeah.
They can earn high school credit-bearing credit in, they mentioned algebra. There's about 5 that earned it in geometry last year. So they're in 9th grade taking Algebra 2, which is pretty cool. Spanish and art. There's an advanced art course that earns high school credit. So it's kind of fun when they come in with a jump start. Yeah.
I'll confirm that that's an error, or that Amy didn't add it, so we can pay our middle school students to teach. I'll confirm that with Amy tomorrow.
I understood what it meant when it was saying that.
I didn't catch it when you had said it. I just was, yeah.
Some of those kids could teach them. It's pretty cool. Okay, and then getting them.
Sorry, I had a quick question before we
go
go on.
ahead.
I wanted to ask Dr. Perez. John mentioned that the schools are collaborating a lot more than they ever have before. Why do you think that? Why do you think that's different now than it used to be?
I think we should ask Will and Christina. I certainly have some thoughts, but are you okay if they go first?
The why is because of our kids, to be honest. We, as 4 elementary principals, we understand that all of our kids are funneled into one middle school and into one high school. And so us getting aligned in our teaching practices, our communication to what is important and urgent to our students and our staff members is one of the most important things that we can do for that future readiness, for that profile of a graduation. So us aligning together to really make sure that it is a clear, concise, and very intentional only benefits our kids because we're all funneling them into the greater good.
Yeah, I'd say Dr. Perez often talks to us about our role to hire high-quality educators and put good teachers in front of our students. His role is to hire high-quality administrators that can do that work. And I think we just have a team right now that, as Christina said, is highly focused on what are the good outcomes and the right outcomes for our students. And it's very apparent when that's our focus that we can learn from each other in that way, and that it's, there doesn't need to be a competition or a pride thing of like, I need to do it for myself, or I need to figure this out over here, but how can we go and learn from people? And a lot of it is coming from our teachers as well. They're driven, and as we've created those avenues and those opportunities for them to collaborate with each other, they're asking each other questions, and they're making us say, hey, I need to do this. I'm hearing something really good is happening over there. Can you help me figure this out and learn it so I can do it for our kids? So it's just really driven by the administrative and as well as our teaching staff who are focused on good outcomes for kids above everything else, above any level of professional pride or any other barriers that might have existed in the past. Those things have been broken down, and we're able to just do the right work for the kids.
Yeah, and I think the question that you're asking is in the body of research, it would be that we have leaders that are demonstrating a high level of efficacy. And when you're efficacious, when you feel good that what you do matters and will make a difference for folks, you're better at it. And so what I think has happened over the last couple of years, number one is some stability. We have some principals in place that have been there for a bit. You have principals with enough talent and skill and excellence that they're willing to be vulnerable and learn from one another. And one of the ways to develop efficacy, there's 4 ways. One of them is through vicarious experiences. You watch someone else do it. You go watch someone work in a lab and lead a lab, and you're like, oh, that's how a really good lab person does it. I'm going to do some of those things. But you have to know what you're looking for, right? What really good people do. So you have to have some expertise and then a willingness to go out and do it. And that willingness, I think, comes from a willingness to be vulnerable and to know that there's safety. Jessica has led some work with our high school with Chuck Salina, and he talks about what people really want from us are time, safe presence, and something to offer. And we had an admin meeting today, and sometimes there's some levity and sometimes there's some seriousness and all of those things, but it feels safe in there for people, I think, to be vulnerable with one another and to learn from one another and say, I don't have this figured out, but Christina does. And so I'm going to go ask her about it. And so I think those partnerships and that what we've really tried to develop, and part of that comes from my own experience as a principal where I didn't always have that. And then some of my experiences as assistant superintendent when I didn't always create those circumstances. And my mentor taught me one really important lesson several years ago. Remember how you felt as a student and the things teachers did to you to make you feel that way? And when they made you feel good about yourself, do that stuff. And when they made you feel not so good, don't do that. And then when you become a principal, remember what good principals did for you as a teacher. Do that for your teachers. And the stuff you didn't like so much, don't do that. And I think we're just at a point now into our 4th year in this whole project for Jessica and I. We're trying to be mindful and get feedback about, they didn't like that so much. Let's not do that again. Hey, we think we might want to do this. Well, let's go ask them what they think about that before we go do it. And we continue to challenge with one another and rumble a little bit. And These guys don't always like the ideas that we share with them, but I think they feel comfortable enough to share that. And so that's where I think it's coming from. It really is, like Christina said, these are all our kids. We're all in it together.
Can I share an observation that I've seen since I've been on the board? Just like you were talking about the students, when you push them and when you have high expectations, they'll rise to the occasion. I've seen that happen with our admin under your leadership, Pete, and the teachers do that under their leadership. And just like students, when you have a great teacher, you want to work really hard for them. And when you have a great principal, you want to work really hard for them. And when you have a great superintendent, you want to work really hard for them. And so that's just something that I have seen since I've been on the board, where it has been clunky, and we have finally got to where it seems like everyone's working really hard as a team at the same time. Anyway, that's just
Yeah, appreciate that observation. Everybody is working very hard. We talked about this the other day. There's a visual model for managing complex change, and one of the ideas is around false starts. You do something like, if I think about the graduate profile, it feels like we've had several false starts. But really a more, I think, appropriate image of that, a sense is a treadmill. We've been on this treadmill getting exhausted talking about graduate profile. And again, with some stability and some coherence, which is what this is about, now maybe we're not on that treadmill. Now we're actually making some forward progress. And one of the things that I want to make sure gets shared before we go to the fourth area is we're sharing this sort of story in the weeds and the details of what we're saying we're going to do. You're going to have 3 other presentations not unlike this with some of these same people and maybe some others about here's how we're doing. You know, in your industry and what's happening now at the fair, we're feeding the pig right now, but we're going to weigh it a couple times. And we're going to come tell you how that's growing and developing and what we're doing. And so your job is to hold me accountable to do the things we said we're going to do, and then to support us when we say, well, this is how much progress we made, and this is what we need you to help us with to do next. So I think we're really at someone asked me to describe the start of the school year, and last year I just kept saying, wow, that felt smooth. And it was sort of the post-pandemic experience, and people were glad to be back in schools. This first couple of weeks of school, I've really felt strong. Like, they're up and going. Like, you know, it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks last year before Ludwig knew how to serve lunch, and now they're starting groups tomorrow, and you know, things are going. And Will's on the 3rd or 4th iteration of what he's pushing next, and Justin over at Wahidas, and Denise at Scootney. Like, they're making progress. Carlos is leading his team, and some really cool things happening at the high school with Kat that Jessica's supporting. So. We really do have strong people. It really comes down to that. Because the other thing I tell the principals, it's first who, then what. This is a lot of what stuff. And we have some really good who's right now in the right spot that we need to leverage and move forward.
Are you sure?
Okay. Yep. You have 2 minutes. I told the board we'd be done at 8:25.
Well, you're being a painter tonight. Okay, the final goal area, I co-led this session with Carlos and Dr. Meek. So we had a great team of people thinking through predominantly 7 through 12. And now that you completely understand the format of this document, I won't scare you with we have 5 outcomes, so I'll go through them very quickly. The first one for all of our students, but it kind of bookends what you've been hearing tonight. We know that we need to increase the number of students passing all of their classes at every grading period. So not just what happens at the end of the year, but all along the way. So the first goal outcome there, I will just highlight a few words in those for the teachers and the educators will. The very first one is frequently talk to our kids. Have them look at their grades, their proficiency scales, all of the things so that they know their own skills and knowledge so they can advocate for what they need. The second one's about parents. We have to always make sure that parents are in the fold and that we're frequently communicating out what's happening with their kids. The next one's about intervention. So it's super important to use our formative assessments and always know which students need to get into that intervention cycle so they don't get too far behind when they go on to core instruction, meet the next standard. And then the final thing in the first outcome is about attendance. And you've certainly heard enough about attendance, but Unfortunately, in secondary, that can start to go downhill, which we know is the #1 reason that kids are unsuccessful. So we think about attendance all the time at the middle school and both high schools. So that first one's really about traditional grading. The second one is about standards-based grading. So very similar behaviors that we want. We know that we need to speak with students and parents again about their performance on standards. So that's a pretty new thing. I know you've heard a lot about it, but being able to interpret, empower the new scoring system around standards-based, as well as Skyward. Some kids in 7 through 12 have grades on both. We have to dabble in both for 1 more year till we have full implementation next year. But we don't want to forget about traditional grading and look forward to standards-based. So again, intervention piece around standards-based grading. I'm going fast, so if you have questions, raise your hand. The third outcome is about the high school and beyond plan. So we thought it was very important to intentionally call out the high school and beyond plan, because this goal area is about future ready. So everybody needs a plan what they're going to do the fall after their 13th year of education. Every fall that they can remember before that, they went to school. They went on to the next grade. And this is the scariest year. And we can't just be talking to them in April and May of their senior year. So we have really good plans in place, and we start this high school and beyond plan in the 7th grade with some basic stuff, and then really hype it up as they get older. But this outcome is all about a very intentional scope and sequence being taught to all of our students through our advisory program, and having everybody know the graduation requirements that are going to apply to them. So keeping accurate records from year to year. There's a lot of options in high school, as you know, for kids to do different things, and somebody always needs to be looking out for them and know their story individually. The fourth outcome is about freshmen. This is probably the most exciting thing that's going on at OHS is our new Husky Pack. And when you visit on Monday, I know that you're going to spend a significant amount of time in the 700 wing, which is where the pack is housed. And this is basically a freshman academy. We've researched and talked about this for years. These goals are around more intentional relationship building, making sure our freshmen start with really strong organizational habits. You can see kind of the things we've identified there. Across the board, freshmen have standards-based grading, so there won't be a new learning curve for them from traditional to standards-based, and that's piggybacking off of a lot of the work they did at McFarland last year. And back to McFarland, they're very organized in the way they move between classes, and they're used to having 2 or 3 of the same teachers all day. That's sort of what the pack looks like. It's a slower day. They see fewer teachers, so those teachers get to know them better. Freshman advising. We know that AVID has tried and true strategies. We're totally building in organizational and AVID strategies into the pack. So the goal there is to get freshmen all of their credits, so that there's a big indicator if you're on track to graduate at the end of 9th grade, high percentage that you'll graduate on time. So that area has been identified. We're doing that through building relationships. Lots of training and PD went into that particular group of teachers. I really, really believe we have the right people on board. I'm really excited for you to visit on Monday. And then finally, our 5th and last outcome is about graduation pathways. So besides the number of credits in the right areas that students need to graduate, and their completed high school and beyond plan, the third area that students have to have Washington State grad requirements is a graduation pathway. And the most common way to earn this pathway is by passing the Smarter Balanced Assessment. So if a student passes an ELA and math, that requirement's done. We believe that they've attained the skills and they're ready to go on. But the state over the last 5 or 10 years has really recognized that Not everybody's going to pass the Smarter Balance. So what are other ways to show that you are serious about your future and you've taken steps to know what you want to do after high school? So some of the other things that they'll recognize are a certain score on the ASVAB, and that's the test that students take who are interested in going into a military branch. So maybe those explorers, that's the direction they want to go, and they want to show you that they're passionate about that, and they'll score high on the ASVAB. So that meets their graduation pathway. Course taking patterns, like through career and technical education, is recognized as a grad pathway. Our advanced college-bound students, if they take dual credit courses and earn a certain grade in those courses, that might be recognized as a grad pathway. But our biggest fear is they go into their senior year after having taken 20 credits of randomness, and they never really knew where they were headed. So this outcome is about guiding them, having knowledgeable advisors and administrators, and setting up programs that meet student needs so that they are very intentional about their course-taking pathways and can get to the outcome they want, hopefully in the career interest area that they're interested in as well. And look at our performance targets. Oh, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I tease those guys because it's harder when they're younger, but we're not, I'm not willing to say 9 out of 10 are going to graduate on time. What if that number 10's your student or somebody who just had something rough go on their freshman year or whatever? So we, lofty goals, but that's where we need to be.
Yeah, and I think along the lines of lofty goals, and lots of people set them or make statements, we've been talking for the last year or so, year and a half, about motion and action. And this is a lot of motion. We spent a year and a half with Dr. Campbell going through some motions, putting some ideas and concepts together. And a strategic plan is about taking action. And so your job and responsibility is to hold me accountable, that we actually go out and do these things, right? That this isn't a one-time thing where we present it to you. The Husky Pack is an excellent example. I think what Amy shared there is we've been talking about that idea for a long time, right? We've seen it. With Dr. Campbell's support, we named it. And then we put it in the plan, and now we're doing it. That's action. That's going from motion to action. And so we're excited about some of those opportunities. And what we'll do is we'll evaluate how that thing's going. We'll watch it for the first trimester. Hey, did more freshmen pass than last year? Why do we think that is? Where do our teachers need more support? We'll get some feedback from the kids. What are we going to do second trimester? Hey, we're 2 trimesters in. Was this a good idea? Was it not a good idea? Are we going to keep going forward? Are we going to expand it? All those kinds of thoughts and concepts are the kinds of actions we need to take if we're going to demonstrate progress. So appreciate the opportunity to share it with you, and I would welcome any last questions before we move on.
Excellent presentation. Thank you. There are a few questions I got, or comments, I guess. One thing I noticed a lot of this is really inexpensive, like the safety, the interaction, all those small things you were mentioning. That doesn't cost a lot of money at all. So but it all leads to huge results. We can throw all the money at the world to get these kids to try to graduate, but if you don't do all these simple things, inexpensive things, it's not going to happen. So I look at that, and we're talking about trends and data. That's one data thing I notice is just the interaction. I know if a kid's comfortable, they're going to come to school. They feel safe. They're going to learn, right? And it'll be just year after year after year. And then like planting seeds. Like a lot of kids, they don't know what they want to do. I knew what I wanted to do from when I was in 6th grade. And I'm still doing it. So. But a lot of kids don't, right? So, but if you can plant seeds in their minds, and then maybe as they get older, they can pursue it. Being in an ag community, we need leaders in everything. They don't have to be a potato farmer, but they can be a potato manager. McCain's needs it. Simplot, everybody. So, but if they like potatoes, then they'll follow that pursuit. So, and then, but all the trade programs, we didn't have that when I would graduate, like the CDL. This is the Explorer program. That's just, like I said, more seeds to plant. It's just more opportunities for these kids to learn. So great. Thank you.
And you mentioned about the performance targets at the end of the Future Ready. Those are high. But that's where we expect all of our
Yes.
students to be at the end of the,
And as a community person, I expect you to have those goals, because that's what our tax dollars are going for, so that's excellent. That's what it should be. Sorry, Ken.
no, that's okay.
All right, we appreciate the group staying late tonight and presenting with us, and so we'll move on to the next agenda item, I think.
Now it's time for public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight? Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for sticking around for the public comment tonight. A lot of information that we're given, and I hope that you guys have listened to that too and seen all the work that we've been doing lately. If I could get you to state your name and address for the record.
I am Amanda Vossriam. I live at 1012 South Sundance Road here in Othello. Whew. What makes a great community? It's educators. Sorry. The teachers themselves that shape our children into productive community members. I'm here tonight to ask the board to honor those who taught you and those who shaped this district and community to what it is now. I apologize. I would like the board to create a method of recognizing exceptional influential educators who performed within the Othello School District. Over the last few years, our community has lost several community-based influential educators. They have passed away without notable school district recognition. Fred Bosch, Ray Rice, and recently Bob Barrett are just a few. These educators are worthy of board and community recognition. I ask that the board become the conduit information and recognition. To the end, I would like the board to begin the process of creating a recognition process. A suggested process may include a monument wall going back as far as the start of each school themselves. Criteria for an individual's name to appear on the wall is that they spent their teaching career here in Othello and retired in good standing. I'd like to see an individual wall for each school, dating back to the start of each school. Like, why is McFarland Middle School named as such? Because Bob McFarland was a great educator who influenced a generation of educators who should appear on this monument alongside his name. I attended Othello schools up to 5th grade. I didn't have Fred Bosch, Ray Rice, or even Bob Barrett. When I moved back to Othello to raise my family in the Othello School District, and with my job at the post office, I got a chance to meet these former educators. Fred lived on my mail route. My siblings had him in school, so I heard stories, but I got to know Fred after he retired. His legacy, if nothing else, should be memorialized on a wall for future generations to see. Bob Barrett, I met on the sideline of a soccer game I was coaching. My daughter was playing in. He was there taking pictures. Bob and I talked often throughout the years my kids went to high school. He was a kind man and loved Othello. His passing last week was more than sad for me. Knowing Bob had no family here in Othello. He has a brother in Spokane, but no family here. Who's going to know the name Bob Barrett and his impact on generations of families still here in Othello without some sort of recognition from the district? I live in a small neighborhood with just under 30 homes, 10 of which are retired or current Othello educators. Clearly, Othello-based educators, as community members, have an influence on all of us, even beyond the classroom, and have and deserve board recognition. Please consider this request to create a method of recognizing exceptional influential leaders, and let's not wait until any more pass away to do so. I have brought some examples of proposed ways to do so. These are pavers in front of City Hall. I spent 12 years as a volunteer firefighter, and during my time there, we had created a monument with names. And then after each name, whenever I spent 12 years, and so after my name, my highest rank will be posted on the wall itself. And then also, if a granite wall is chosen by the board, the property just out here to the vacant lot along the parking lot would be a great place for a granite wall with those names on it.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank you. You gave us something to really think about and take a future look at it.
Thank you for your service.
Is there any other public comment tonight? Okay, seeing then.
Ken, if I could just for a moment to share the district perspective and to thank you for sharing your story. I think we're in a unique position with this particular board and with me as superintendent and Marisa sitting to my left. We all graduated from Othello High School. I learned about economics and I learned how to drive a car from Bob Barrett. I spent a lot of time with Bob talking about local athletes and athletics, and I never heard Bob say a bad word about any kid. Never. He'd comment on coaches, but he wouldn't on kids. Ray Rice taught me geometry, and Ray Rice did the master schedule at Othello High School with a pencil year after year after year and always got it right. So I appreciate the stories that you're sharing about these people, and it's an important thing for us to consider. And so I wanted to let you know from the district perspective, I take it really seriously what you just shared. I really appreciate the examples you provided as well. And so if you could leave this for us and give us some time to process and think about it. But I want you to know that I'm right there with you. The way that you're talking and trying to recognize people who raised the people that are up here, it's important that we do that. And we're all of a certain age now where we have to go to too many of those services and to honor them in that one way. But I also want to let you know this, that that even when those folks are gone, that the lessons they taught and the stories we continue to tell about them in our school district and in our classrooms and thinking about the things we learned from them, they continue to go. There are so many people in our schools now teaching that were taught by those people and a whole lot more. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, and you have my commitment to sharing with the board some concepts and ideas about ways we can do that. So appreciate you being here tonight.
With that, we will go to upcoming events. September 12th, Cookies and Convo. September 16th, the Othello High School board site visit, which will start at 8 a.m. And then our next regular meeting will be September 23rd, 7 p.m. Is there any other things to add to that?
I just want to make a comment, Ken. Sometimes as time goes on, we forget, but this Wednesday's 9/11, and hopefully our schools are teaching about 9/11. But some of you that are new here, there is a tie to Othello. My brother worked in that tower, but we were showing cows at the Washington State Fair when it happened on that day. So it was the first time in 4 years my brother was able to come out to work and got vacation time. So he was in Washington when all that happened. But he worked in the South Tower, which was a second one to get hit, but first one to fall down. And so even though it's 4,000 miles away, there is a tie to Othello, and you know, here we are 23 years later. It's kind of slips away from us, but I wanted the community to know that there is a tie to Othello, and we need to kind of take a breath there on Wednesday morning. Just remember, and it ties to our first responders, right? So many of the 3,000 people that died that day were first responders, and I think it put a whole new light on our first responders, and the dangers that they do, and it's great for that Explore program. So I don't know, it kind of all ties together, but I just wanted to just bring that up.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now it's time for board self-assessment of the meeting.
Great meeting, very informational. It's nice to be, it seems like the summer, our board meetings were quick and fast, but now we're back into the heart of things, and it's been, this strategic planning information is great. A lot of things to read upon, so it's great for that.
Very appreciative of the hard work that went into making this
Yes.
happen. I mean,
Yes.
as a person who is not a professional educator, I mean, each of these little boxes has so much energy, time, effort, all the things put into it. So thank you so much for all of your hard work and for presenting tonight and taking that time. Really appreciate it. A major highlight for me was the kids that were here from the Explorer program. Anytime we have students at a board meeting, I know it's a highlight for all of us, especially when those students are top tier kids that are doing great things and just really killing it. So loved having them come.
And they'll pull you over one day.
Yep, guaranteed.
And we're really excited about the plan and the positive effects it's going to have for our students. We're really looking forward to that. Director Pernetta missed out. You can decide which column that goes in.
I appreciate the public comment tonight, too.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Any other business for the self-assessment of the meeting? Okay, then we will go on to executive session. The board will meet and recess into executive session for 30 minutes to discuss the performance of an employee. No action will be taken following the executive session. We'll meet back in Pete's office in 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.